Hello, welcome back to Alexa, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to make this trench coat. For this trench coat we are using the Simplicity 8796 pattern, and I am making View D, which is this bottom view right here, and I chose her because of the length. She is longer than the rest of the views and she has a tie belt, and I really wanted that in my trench coat. Let's see, and for this pattern I chose the largest size, which is the size 24. My hip measurements are 49.5, so according to this pattern size, the 24 would be the best for me, the 24 size, which means I need about 5 yards. So I'm making this fabric, and I'm making 5 yards of patchwork denim with all of my denim scraps. Check out my patchwork method tutorial on my channel to learn how I made the fabric for this trench coat. Also, for this coat you will need a lining, so about 4 yards for lining. You'll need about 3 yards for medium weight interfacing, and then you'll need thread, 4 3/4 inch buttons, 1 pair of shoulder pads, 1 3" by 10" remnant of polyester fleece for the sleeve heading, and then you'll need 2 1" buttons. And the fabrics that you can use for this project: brocade, micro suede, tweed, velveteen, wool types. And if you are matching any patterns, you'll need extra fabric, like if you're matching plaid, stripes, or any one-way designs. I already cut out the fabric pieces and transferred the markings and notches for this trench. Let me show you what pieces we're working with. Here we have the back pieces, the back facing, the upper sleeve, the undersleeve, the front lining, the back lining, the upper sleeve lining, the undersleeve lining, the front, the pocket lining, the upper collar, the under collar, the front facing, the carrier, and the tie belt. The only pattern adjustments I made to this project were for the sleeves and the sleeve linings. I added a total of 4 inches to those parts to account for my long arms. Let me know if you like a tutorial on how to make those adjustments. Let's start by stay stitching the back neck edges, then sew the center back seams. Press the seam open. I'm just top stitching at that seam. This is optional. I'm doing this because I patchworked this fabric together and I want the seams to stay flat. Sew the pocket lining to the pocket along the upper edge. Press the seam toward the lining. With right sides together, fold the upper edge of the pocket along the fold line. Sew the unnotched side and the lower edge. Trim the excess seam allowance. Clip the curves. Turn the pocket right side out. Press the pocket flat. Sew the raw edges together using a basting stitch. Look at that pretty pocket. On the right side of the fabric, pin the pocket to the front along the pocket line, matching large dots and having raw edges even. Make sure that the lining on the pocket isn't showing. Machine baste the raw edges together, then sew close to the pocket side and lower edges. Clip the front starting from the raw edge at the inner corner, clipping between the small dots and along the center of the dart for about 1 inch below the small dots. Sew the front to the back at the shoulder seams. Sew the undercollar at the center back seam. With right sides together, pin the front edge of the undercollar to the coat, matching the notches and the small and large dots. Then sew between the small and large dots. Press the seam open. Don't worry about trimming this seam now, it'll be trimmed later. Clip the back neck edge of the coat to the stay stitching along the curves. To sew the remaining neck edge and make the dart in front, on the inside with right sides together, bring the stitching lines together, matching the center backs and small dots, placing the inner small dot at the shoulder seam. Sew each side from the center back to point of the dart along the stitching lines. Trim the neck seam between the darts and clip the curves. Press the seam open, pressing the dart away from the center. Sew the front to back at the side seams. Here you'll see me hand basting the hem up. I was supposed to just mark the hem line, which will be 1.5 inches from the lower edge, not fold it up. So you'll see me take this out when it's time to do the facing. Fold the carrier in half lengthwise with wrong sides together. Press, setting in that crease. Open out the long edges of the carrier and turn them to the wrong side so that they meet at the crease. Press. Fold the carrier in half lengthwise, bringing the pressed edges together. Sew close to the pressed edges. Cut the carrier in half so that you have 2 carriers. Turn under 1 centimeter on raw edges of carriers. On the outside of the coat, center and pin ends of carriers at the small dots on the side seam. Sew close to the turned ends. Pin the upper sleeve to the undersleeve at the front edge. Sew, stretching the front edge of the upper sleeve to fit between the notches. With right sides together, fold the lower corners of the upper sleeve, matching the broken lines. Press the seam open, turn the hem allowance to the outside. Sew the hem extension on the undersleeve in a 1/4 inch seam. Turn the corners to the inside, pressing up the hem and extension on the upper sleeve to the inside along the fold line, forming a facing. Press under a scant 1 centimeter on remaining side edges of the undersleeve. This just means your seam is slightly under 1 centimeter. With right sides together, pin the upper sleeve to the undersleeve at the back edge, matching the large dots. Sew, easing the back edge of the undersleeve to fit between the notches, pivoting with needle in the fabric at the large dot, and sewing upper edges of the extension together. Clip the undersleeve to large dot at the inner corner, then press the seam open above the clip. To make the hem lie flat, catch stitch the hem in place. To ease the top of the sleeve between notches, stitch along the seam line and a 1/4 inch inside the seam line using a long machine stitch. Turn the sleeve right side out and sew the buttons to each upper sleeve at the small dot. I was going through my stash of buttons and I wasn't feeling any of them, which is funny because previously I was, but after patchworking the denim and getting this far in the coat, I'm not settling for just any buttons. So this step will have to wait until I get some buttons I love, not tolerate. Turn the garment inside out. Slip the sleeve inside the armhole and pin, matching the notches and small dots. Draw up the E-stitching at each end, sliding the fabric along to distribute the fullness evenly in between the notches. The goal is to get the sleeve to fit smoothly in the armhole. I hand basted the sleeve in place before taking it to the machine. Sew a second row an 1/8 inch away from the first within the seam allowance. Trim the seam allowance close to the stitching in the underarm area between the notches. It's try-on time. I love the adjustments I made to the sleeves. They're the perfect length. Press the seam allowances of the armhole sleeve. Grab the polyester fleece and cut it in half lengthwise, forming 2 headings. Pin the heading to the armhole on the inside of the sleeve, placing the center of the heading at the shoulder seam, having the raw edges even. Sew a 1/2 inch from the garment side. Try on the garment and insert the shoulder pad and adjust to fit until it looks right and feels comfortable. Catch stitch the pad to the shoulder seam. Apply interfacing to the front facing and the back facing. To reinforce the front facing at the inner corners, sew along the seam lines for about 1 inch on each side of the small dot, sewing through the small dot. Stay stitch the neck edge of the back facing. Sew the shoulder seams. Clip the neck edge of the back facing to the stay stitching. Right sides together, pin the upper collar to the neck edge of the facing, matching the center's back, notches, small and large dots, placing the inner small dots at the shoulder seams. Here I'm just clipping that front facing to the small dot of the inner corner. This is optional, but I'm hand basting everything in place first before I take it to the machine. When you take it to the machine, you want to sew between the large dots, pivoting with the needle in the fabric at the small dot at inner corners from the facing. Trim the neck seam between the inner corners, clip the curves. Press the seam open. Sew the center back seam of the back lining pieces. To make the pleats in the back lining on the inside, bring the broken lines together. Sew along the broken lines for about 3 inches beginning at the neck edge. Backstitch at the end of the stitching to reinforce. Baste the remainder of the pleat along the broken lines. Press the seam and pleats to one side. Stay stitch across the neck edge and remove the basting from the pleat. Clip the neck edge to the stay stitching. With right sides together, sew the front lining to the back lining at the shoulder and side seams. Pin the upper sleeve lining to the undersleeve lining, matching the notches. Take it to the machine and sew. Ease the top edge of the sleeve lining, same as for the sleeve. Press under a 1/2 inch on the lower edge of the sleeve lining. This is optional, but I hand basted the lining edge before pressing. After pressing, I remove the basting stitches. Sew the sleeves to the lining, same as for the coat. With right sides together, pin the lining to the facing, matching the center's back, shoulder seams, notches, and small dots. You want to sew above the small dots, easing the front facing to fit between the notches. Backstitch at the small dots to reinforce the seams. Clip only the facing seam allowance at the end of the stitching. Press the seam toward the lining, pressing under 1.5 centimeters on inner edge of the facing below the clip. With right sides together, pin the upper collar to the under collar, matching the center backs, notches, small and large dots. Here I'm hand basting the outer edge of the upper and under collar together between the large dots. Sew from the center back to the large dot, overlapping a few stitching at center back and being sure to sew exactly to the large dots at the end of the collar. Pin the facing to the front, matching the small and large dots. Here I'm taking that hem out. I basted earlier. And now you see me marking the hem lining with the basting stitch. Hand baste from the large dot at the neck edge to the inner edge of the facing, easing the front facing to fit. Sew from the large dot, stitching along the seam line on front edges and then exactly 1.5 inches above the lower edge of the front facing. Trim the lower edge of the facing close to the stitching. Trim the coat to within 1.5 centimeters of the inner facing edge. Press the seams open. Pin the lower edges of the coat and lining, matching centers, back, and seams. Sew the lower edges between the turn edges of the front lining in a 1/2 inch seam, leaving an opening on the lower edge of the back to turn the coat. Here I'm removing some of those loose threads with a lint roller. Turn the coat and lining to the right side. A battle wound. Lost a nail. Found it. Push out the corners of the collar. Press the collar flat. Press the facing and the front flat. Press the coat hem. Here I'm adding the buttons to the sleeves. Slip the sleeves in place. Then tack the underarm, armholes, and neck. Slip stitch the pressed edge of the lining 1 inch above the lower edge of the coat. Remove the basting stitches from the hem. Slip stitch the press edge of the sleeve lining 1 inch above the lower edge of the sleeve. Make buttonholes and fronts at the markings. Sew button to the left front under the buttonhole. On the inside, sew the button to the right front facing under the buttonhole. Now let's work on the tie belt. Sew the notched ends of the tie belt at 1 centimeter seam allowance. Press the seam open. Fold the belt in half lengthwise with right sides together. Sew and leave an opening to turn. My opening is very big because since I'm using denim, especially patchwork denim, it's a little difficult to turn. So I turned in the raw edges about 1 centimeter and hand basted them, then pressed the basted edges flat. Then I removed the basting stitches. Then I top stitched all the edges of the belt. Give it a good press. And here's the finished product. I am literally obsessed with this trench coat. It was definitely a labor of love and it's so unique. I feel special knowing I'm the only person on this earth with this coat. This coat holds affirmations I speak over my life and my commitment to my craft. I just love sewing. I love this tie belt. Look at the buttons. Check out those pockets. Look at that detail. I just love this, but comment your questions, drop some love, let me know what you think, and thank you for watching. Until next time.